Hello, I want to say a few words today about self-esteem and especially about self-esteem and how we see ourselves because I found that in my experience, self-esteem is really strongly connected to how we see ourselves, of course, on every level. And so I wanted to say a few words today about self-esteem and how that affects how we see ourselves, and give you a few tips there as far as improving our self-esteem and the way we view ourselves. And so when we have low self-esteem, for instance, it can affect the way that we see ourselves. In other words, when we have low self-esteem, sometimes we may not see ourselves in a clear light because it can be coloured by our low self-esteem. And so we may not perceive ourselves, when we look at ourselves in the mirror, we may not perceive ourselves in a true light because our self-esteem levels have convinced us that we are at a certain level or of a certain worth, and possibly if we have low self-esteem, that we are not worth very much, that we do not look the way we want to look, or we do not feel the way we want to feel, or our life isn't the way that we want it to be. And that could be due to our low self-esteem. So raising our self-esteem levels can have a phenomenal effect on the way that we see ourselves and how we view ourselves, and sometimes also how much we can love ourselves. So I wanted to highlight some points as far as acknowledging really the importance of having strong feelings of self-worth, which is what self-esteem is. It's how we feel about ourselves and the type of worth that we apportion to ourselves. So people with low self-esteem, for instance, often don't feel very worthy. And that, of course, can influence the sort of decisions that we make in our life, and also how happy we feel about ourselves and our lives. And it can also affect us making the types of decisions that could actually improve our self-esteem and make us feel better. And one of those decisions could be the types of relationships that we have in our lives, and what we can do about that, and the sorts of situations that we're attracting into our lives because of our low self-esteem potentially, and the effect that that can have then on an ongoing basis on our life when we attract the sort of low frequency, low self-esteem type behaviours and situations to us. So, and that of course will impact on the way we see ourselves again. And so one of the things that I mention quite a lot in these videos is actually self-love and the importance of self-love, particularly for our self-esteem and our self-confidence. Because the thing is, when we have low self-esteem, it can impact our ability to truly love ourselves authentically. And it's quite important to really love ourselves, because that will influence our self-esteem levels, and that will impact on the type of relationships and situations that we attract to us and that we believe that we deserve as well. So our self-esteem levels do impact on our choices that we make as well. If we have high self-esteem, others will generally come in line with that. They usually agree with our version of ourselves that we put out there, really. So people will pick up on the type of frequency that we're giving out regarding how we feel about ourselves and the sort of worth that we apportion to ourselves. And that will then impact on our self-esteem because other people's behaviour does tend to affect how we feel about ourselves. Unless we have very strong boundaries, we have a very strong self-empowerment basis to work from, and that we love ourselves very much as well. But otherwise, other people's opinion of us and their behaviour towards us can really impact our self-esteem if we do not have low self-esteem, especially. So how we see ourselves and how we perceive ourselves is quite important as far as our self-esteem is concerned. So it's quite a good idea to have an objective stance when we look at ourselves and look at our lives and who we truly are, rather than waiting for the validation to come from other people, which could be biased anyway and not always in our favour. So it's quite a good idea to have an authentic and a real view of ourselves and an objective view of who we are, and look at ourselves in a way as we would do with other people, in a non-judgmental way, so that we can take an objective stance when looking at ourselves, rather than taking on other people's view of us, as it were, which could impact our self-esteem negatively. And just a note that I've made here as far as self-esteem in general is concerned, and the impact that can have on our personal development. Because if we feel stuck, or if we are stuck in low self-esteem, sometimes it can sort of put us off from going further in our own personal development, because we may feel that there isn't any further to go in our own development, because we feel so stuck in this low self-esteem area, and we may feel unable to rise any higher than that. So it's quite important, as far as our personal development and our personal growth is concerned, that we realise the impact that our self-esteem has on our life in general, and we bear that in mind for the future, so that we take our self-esteem seriously, and we start to take ourselves seriously as far as our own growth is concerned, because it's important that we live the best life that we can live, and we are happy, and that we are continually growing and evolving, and gaining new experiences, and attracting the sorts of relationships and situations that we truly deserve, whatever our levels of self-esteem are. So I hope that's helpful, and as always, stay safe and very happy. Bye bye.